Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll give everyone just about 30 more seconds or so, and we'll get started right at the top of the hour. So bear with us for just a few more minutes or a few more seconds, and we'll get started shortly. All right, well, it is 2 p.m. Eastern on the dot, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this Ask the Experts webinar. I'm Allison Phillips, Director of Marketing on Cox Media's corporate team, and I'm going to be your host today. Some quick housekeeping items before I introduce our guest expert here. This presentation is being recorded. You'll receive an email with the recording so you can watch it again at your convenience or share with your teams. Our webinars are usually either 30 minutes or a full hour, but today's event is right in that sweet spot in the middle. So we have about 35 minutes of great content for you, and then 10 to 15 minutes or so set aside for Q&A. But if at any time during the presentation you do have a question, just go ahead and type it into the question box on your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. We are particularly excited about today's topic of Google Analytics, as Cox Media has recently been named a 2023 Premier Partner with Google. This means that we've set ourselves apart by being one of the top 3% of Google Ads partners in the US, demonstrating our commitment to attaining product expertise and helping our clients succeed with Google Ads. So speaking of Google, I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest expert, Alex Fleschner. Those of you who joined us for our first event with Google back in 2022, this may be more of a reintroduction, as Alex was our featured guest speaker then as well. We're thrilled to have him back today. Having been at Google for more than 9 years and now a head of marketing, Alex has not only established a very keen understanding of full funnel measurement and how to create effective campaigns across various digital platforms, he has also demonstrated the value of marketing as a revenue center rather than a cost center. In addition to his professional accomplishments, of which there are many, Alex is a dedicated parent and enjoys spending time with his wife and his 1-year-old. He has a passion for astronomy and has chased solar eclipses around the world. When not working, parenting, or chasing these eclipses, Alex enjoys playing Scrabble and welcomes any challengers. Challenge accepted, Alex. For today's conversation, Alex's unique expertise will help outline some key changes in the Google Analytics space and what that means for advertisers like you. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Allison. It's great to be back. 2022 seems like forever ago, but so nice to be back on the Cox Media Ask the Expert webinar. Really enjoy being here as always, and I'll tell you about my Scrabble Google interview story another time since you accepted my challenge. But great to be here with everybody else. I do want to start with a quick video to tease what I'll be talking about today. So let's see if this works. AI, generative AI, AI. It uses AI to bring AI. So if you haven't seen that video clip by now, that was actually a compilation that's been going around the internet from Google I/O from yesterday. And since today's topic is about AI, I wanted to make sure that I could showcase that video to you. All right, I'm just kidding. Today's topic is not about AI, and I know I'm from Google, and I will not be talking about AI except for a small sliver of today's presentation. The real reason why you all are here is probably because of this banner. And I like to call it the banner of death. I'm sure many of you, or if not all of you, have probably seen this when signing into Google Analytics. And it's probably the implication or inclination for why you actually ended up signing up for this webinar. GA4 is required, or is going to be required, as you can tell from that notification, by July 1st of this year. So what are we at? Two months away or so? Less than 2 months. And I'm here to hopefully convince you why and how you should start migrating, and not just migrating within that 2 months, but migrating now. So just a quick slide to set the stage. We're going to start with a quick intro to GA4. We're going to get into 3 different buckets or pillars that I want to address that's shaping this new iteration of Google Analytics and how it differs versus Universal Analytics or the current instance. And then a quick run through in terms of how you can get started as an organization and what that path might look like in terms of the tools and implementations you might need. So why is this change to GA4 so important? Aside from it being a forced change, Universal Analytics, again, which is the current instance of Google Analytics, it's built on an infrastructure that's probably as long as I've been at Google. I remember when I first started at Google, Universal Analytics was just rolling out, replacing the older instance of Google Analytics. So it's about 10 years old or so in terms of the infrastructure that GA has been built on. And it's just not able to support the increasingly high data volumes and the cookieless world and modeling capabilities that are essentially hitting the ecosystem today. And just thinking about how GA4 can help you better achieve your business outcomes, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at this new platform across 3 different buckets. The first one is it allows you to see unified user journeys across both web and app. So as opposed to Universal Analytics, and we'll get into this, this means you can measure a more unified and holistic user journey by connecting multiple data sources, as opposed to having to look at these in silos. Second, as you collect your data and you get a more holistic view of your users, it enables you to derive powerful business insights. So more to come on that as well. And then lastly, or the third bucket, it's not just about collecting those user insights, and it's not just about finding or deriving the powerful insights that you want to use. It's about actually leveraging those insights and taking action on your data across Google Ads, Google Marketing Platform, and any other platforms that you're buying media or reaching your consumers in. So let's start by diving into that first bucket, first-party data collection. And as we all know, regulatory changes, browser updates, and user expectations have impacted the world of measurement today. GA4 is an analytics solution that is privacy-centric by design, and it allows you to control how data is collected and used based on users' consent. And first-party data has always been important, right? It's always been something that we've been talking about, always been something that we've tried to organize in a way that makes sense. But with third-party cookies going away, as I'm sure many of you have heard about, first-party data has become that much more magnified in terms of its significance, and again, how you're collecting it and leveraging that data. So GA4, and why I'm most excited about GA4, is it's basically been built on that premise. It has best-in-class capabilities, so you can collect and use your first-party data from, again, both your web and your app instances, and it provides you the opportunity to analyze your business and your users' behavior throughout their journey, so you can tailor the right experience based on their needs. And then lastly, for those users that don't consent on their data being collected, GA4 enhances your first-party data with modeling to fill in the gaps from cookie loss, so you can still preserve that behavioral measurement while still respecting your users' privacy. And a little bit more to come on all of this as we continue to go through the presentation. So as you start prioritizing your first-party data collection strategy, connecting your first-party data is also extremely important, so you can enable a holistic view of your user to properly understand them and provide the right experience based on their needs. And first-party data is a key requirement for more advanced use cases, such as cross-channel orchestration, ads personalization, which allows you just to serve your own customers a little bit better. And there's a stat that I think is really important that I wanted to share. 71% of consumers now expect to receive personalized and customized interactions across both web and app instances. And let's just contextualize a little bit further. I wanted to include some further detail about a BCG study. But companies that link, and this is why it's so important, companies that link their first-party data sources can generate 2x the incremental revenue from a single ad placement, and also their efficiency, their cost efficiency. When they integrate their data, their first-party data, it goes up by 1.5x. And the other piece that I haven't listed on here, but with such a huge demand and such a huge increase in efficiency and revenue implications, the problem is that less than a third of marketers are consistently effective at accessing and integrating their data cross-channel. And that's why it's extremely important to start getting that data organized and making sure that you're getting it implemented now. And GA4 makes it pretty easy for you to collect that first-party data. And I think this is the key part. Ensure you're doing it in a privacy-safe way, or maintaining those privacy-safe standards. And there's three different buckets that I think make it the most accessible, a little bit more accessible than past iterations. It does offer more flexible tagging solutions. And I say this in the sense that the solutions are a little bit more flexible as a cross-channel, so both across your web and your app instances, as opposed to past iterations that made it a little bit more complex with various different tagging devices, custom rules that you needed to set, and ways that you'd apply some of those GA or universal tags to the various different platforms that you're leveraging. Next, there's something called consent mode, and we'll get to that shortly. But it is a kind of a safe haven way for advertisers and brands like yourselves to make sure that you are complying with the various different regulations surrounding first-party data collection. And then lastly, GA4 can be implemented via global site tag, via GTM or Google Tag Manager, or server side with GTM. Secondly, it's got a full rebuilt analytics platform with an event-based data model that combines both your app and your web experiences. And more on that on the next slide, which is one of the major differences between Universal Analytics and GA4. And then lastly, GA4 is privacy-centric. As I mentioned, consent mode is one of those options, but it provides you with the right capabilities so the data you're collecting is all done within the first-party data compliance frameworks. So more on that event-based data collection model. GA4 introduced a very different data collection model than what you're used to on the Universal Analytics side. And this is probably the biggest difference, in my opinion, between GA4 and Universal Analytics, and takes some time to get used to. But the event-based model is more representative of how users interact with your websites and your apps, and it can be consistently deployed across applications and provides a little bit more customization based on what you're looking for. And just a quick example, GA4 is event-based, and again, the principle is that any interaction that happens on your website can be captured as an event, as opposed to, which many of you, if you have been within the analytics platform and have set up events in the past, a universal analytics event, or the current prior instance, it has a category, an action, and a label, and is its own hit type. In GA4 properties, every hit is an event, and there is no distinction between those hit types. So GA4 offers different privacy settings that we talked about beforehand that do give you some flexibility in meeting some of those privacy requirements and regulations on multiple levels. They include control over data collection, retention and removal, as well as whether data is used for ads personalization across the various different integrated platforms that Google Analytics works with. For example, Google Ads or GMP. A few examples that I wanted to highlight, hopefully without getting too granular or too boring or too nerdy. GA4, for example, will no longer store or log IP addresses. There's a control called data retention that allows you to limit or expand the duration for which user level and event level data is stored in the Google Analytics servers. For example, you could choose 2 months or you could choose 14 months. And then also what you could choose is whether data from your entire analytics property or a subset based on granular dimensions like geography or event type is applied to your ads personalization. And data is privacy safe, which will naturally limit the amount of data you can collect versus maybe some of the prior integrations. And with that being said, in order to fill some of those measurement gaps, GA4 introduces a behavioral and conversion modeling tool that helps you fill in the gap that as a result of some of those data privacy and consent modes. One of those new features that I alluded to beforehand is consent mode. And basically what consent mode does is it'll actually dynamically adjust your tag behavior based on specific user consent. And it's going to enable you to optimize your business goals while still respecting the privacy choices that your users make. And just a little bit more on the conversion modeling. It comes into play when the platform encounters data that is subject to any of those regulatory restrictions based on browser, based on operating system, and it helps Google Analytics assign linkages between ad interactions and conversions where otherwise that linkage is unobservable. And again, I'll get into this a little bit, but more to come and more to be shared with the slides themselves if you're curious. But the models are actually trained on that observable data to provide more accurate reporting on how conversions should be attributed across channels, whether it be ads, organic traffic, email, or whatever channel that you are driving users to your website or your app. And previously, through Universal Analytics, the channel would just default to direct when it didn't have attribution data connected to a conversion. So it's getting a little bit smarter and it's getting a little bit more specific as opposed to just bucketing everything within that direct group. And what that does, it gives you a more representative view of your performance so that you can make more efficient campaign optimization and bidding decisions. So what do I mean by data centralization and generating a holistic view of your users? Let's just start on the left side of the slide. First, you can collect web and app integrations, as I keep hammering home, because I think that's another key differentiator between Universal Analytics and GA4. And it basically aligns the data sources that have historically, as I mentioned, involved different resources, whether it be tagging resources, headcount resources, whatever that might look like for your brand and for your entity, to resolve some of those different schemas or the different specifications for each one of those platforms that users are interacting with your brand with. And on top of that, you're able to actually enrich your data now with your own first-party data with tools like data import and measurement protocol. At the end of each one of these three sections, I've actually linked the very specific support centers or tools that are listed within Google Analytics to make it a little bit easier for you to organize as we continue to go through the deck and identify if you are interested learning a little bit more about each one of these features or integrations. But by doing this, by combining both your web and app integrations and enriching your data with your own first-party data from offline sources, you enable that holistic view of your users. And for the first time in Google Analytics, actually, you can stitch together three different types of identifiers: user ID, Google signals, which we'll get to shortly, and device IDs. And you basically can stitch all three types of those identities or identifiers into a single unified cross-device user journey. And then lastly, if you have the capabilities in-house to do so, and I know that I mentioned AI at the outset, but this is more so machine learning, you can actually take some of these insights and these reports, and if you have any specific custom use cases, it's that much easier now to import those reports and those insights into BigQuery and activate your data into Google Ads or into GMP. So just to recap, and there'll be a recap at each one of the three sections that we're outlining today, but about collecting first-party data and making sure that you're doing it in a privacy-safe way. GA4 offers multiple new features and capabilities that allow you to do that. And GA4, just to summarize, it's built for a changing ecosystem that is privacy-centric by design. It incorporates a flexible data collection model that enables a more holistic user view. It allows deeper and more seamless integrations or even APIs to ingest your data into Google Analytics. And then lastly, again, it provides those capabilities to properly govern your analytics data. With so much happening in the space on a day-to-day basis with CCPR, GDPR, I apologize. It's ever important to make sure that you have a dynamic tagging strategy and a dynamic first-party data collection strategy. And as I mentioned, each one of the various different features within Google Analytics are listed below, and we've tried to bucket them to make them as easily accessible as possible. So we talked about collecting data and organizing it. Now let's talking about deriving insights from that data. And I'd say GA4 helps you break down your own internal silos, and it increases access to insight in your data so you can better understand your business's performance. And I kind of wanted to couple it across four different levers here. And my first official AI reference will come into play here. But the first is unsampled data. You can access unsampled data and insights in a flexible new UI that simplifies your reporting and your analysis. And a little bit more to come on that shortly in terms of why unsampled data and access to that will be extremely important and time saving for your businesses. Secondly is custom reporting. The custom reports that are available within the new GA4 instance and integration are much more advanced than some of the universal analytics custom reporting features that were available. Google's AI. You'll be able to leverage, and you can now through the GA4 instance, leverage Google's AI to find answers and AI-based insights, or use some of those predictive metrics to build your own audiences that you can then deploy cross-channel. And then lastly, from an attribution perspective, you can understand your own sales and your conversion data with cross-channel attribution. Again, think web and app, and data-driven attribution, or DDA, that many of you might be familiar with. So with GA4, you can now do a variety of different things that we alluded to on the prior slide. First, you'll be able to better easily understand your cross-platform user journey because you're connecting web and app data, but also by providing reports that enable you to quickly dive into insights and understand your user based on where they are on their journey, starting from user acquisition to conversion and all the way through retention. Think about loyalty programs and some of those key metrics that are related to not just bringing them into your door, but also making sure that they're staying within your house, I guess is the best analogy. Next, you can analyze that unsampled and near real-time data for timely and accurate insights. So you're no longer wondering if the data being shown in analytics is accurately representing the performance of your business. As I'm sure maybe several of you have run into with some of the time lags and the data delays based on the sampling of your data in terms of why you're not able to access the most up-to-date information within Google Analytics at some points. Again, the unsampled access allows you to see all of that data in real time and will make your analytics journey or experience that much more efficient. And then lastly, it allows you to customize individual reports based on your own needs. And it does that in a way that's a little bit more sophisticated than the universal analytics ecosystem. And just a few capabilities and reporting tools that I'll jump into a few of them for. But if any of you are using GA4 currently, you'll notice that the interface is different and the sections are a little bit different as well. The four that I wanted to highlight and the four sections that you're going to see are reports, explore or exploration, the advertising workspace. I would think of that as a section to look at to truly measure your ROI, and then the admin section, which is actually changed as well, but still does have a lot of the similar features that Universal Analytics currently offers today. The one section I really wanted to jump into a little bit further was the exploration or the explore function. Essentially what this function or section does is it gives you access to your data and some of the analytical techniques that aren't available in the report section that can help you uncover your insights about your customers without needing to know SQL or without needing to necessarily understand how to leverage BigQuery to come up with some of those insights. And this flexible interface includes multiple analysis techniques. For example, there's cohort exploration, funnel exploration, and padding exploration. I've linked several of these again at the bottom of the slide here if anyone's interested in learning a little bit more. But what you can also access is user lifetime reports. And that's a new technique that gives you deeper insight into the lifetime value or lifetime activity of your customers across your platforms. And again, I think that's super important because there are major intricacies in terms of how users interact with your web instance as well as your app instance. So having this combined into one holistic view will make those lifetime reports that much more interesting, that much more relevant, and that much more actionable. And then lastly, the predictive metrics, such as purchase probability and churn probability, are also available in explorations within the user lifetime technique. So GA4, just digging a little bit further into the AI use case, but GA4 can learn from your data so that basically you can surface powerful insights for questions that you've never even thought to ask or that you've never even asked yet from an analytics platform or from your teams. So within Google Analytics 4, you can access analytics intelligence. It's a set of features that use AI and conditions that you configure to help you understand and act on your data. So for example, you can search for instant answers via natural language search, or exactly how humans tend to type, to ask the AI prompt to come up with the insights that you're looking for, instead of you having to manually look through your analytics accounts and find the correct section. So for example, you could search for conversions last week in the United States. And what you'll see in the search panel is the answer surfaced directly for you. You could also automatically, or through a custom setup, surface these insights on data changes. And it provides you with two sets of insights. The first one is those AI-based insights. So analytics intelligence detects unusual changes or emerging trends in your data and will notify you automatically. And you can customize those notifications if you're getting too many, if you're getting too little. But those are one aspect. The second is custom insights. So you can create your own conditions that detect changes in your data that are important to you as well. When the conditions are triggered, you see the insights on the insights dashboard, and you can optionally receive some of those email alerts, again, based on the frequency and depth of insights that you're looking to get reported back on. So essentially, you've seen some of this in the existing Universal Analytics instance, but this takes it to a whole new level in terms of the customization capabilities, as well as the level of insights that the AI is actually generating for you based on some of those LLM models. So I wanted to give a few examples of some of the AI models. Again, this is not going to cover every use case, but I can share a few other use cases if those are interested across a variety of different verticals, so I can work with the Cox Media team to send those over afterwards. But you could surface those AI-based insights on your data based on user behavior over their lifetime, or even detect anomalies within your data. So as an example, if you're an e-com business, you're probably monitoring your revenue by currently navigating to the e-commerce purchases report. But after you do this a few times, what the AI will start to learn is that information about revenue is important to you. So it's going to basically surface that on the analytics homepage, because it understands, or it started to understand, that that's a section and report that you've tended to flock to, or that you tend to look at pretty frequently. And even further within that, if you're looking at very specific types of reports, that'll all surface dynamically based on where you as a user are leveraging the analytics reports. Another example is you could predict the probability that your customer will likely make a purchase within a certain amount of days, or even predict the probability that customer is going to churn. All of these predictive analytics capabilities not only allow you to unlock valuable insights, but you can also leverage it to build predictive audiences. And then you could leverage those audiences within all of your Google Media platforms, whether it be Google Ads or GMP, Search Ads 360, DV 360. So just to kind of highlight the section on the business intelligence side, just quickly reviewing it, GA4 is going to offer you more robust reporting capabilities, much more advanced insights leveraging Google's AI capabilities, a highly scalable infrastructure for your ever-growing business needs. And again, it allows you to customize reports based on your needs, but get those insights a little bit quicker, especially due to the ability to access some of that unsampled data. And then the last bucket to cover, and I think this is probably the most important bucket, because we've talked about measuring your data and understanding your data. But at the end of the day, it's about the usage of that data, and more importantly, the responsible usage of that data that's going to unlock the real value for your brands or for your businesses. So that same BCG study that I quoted earlier, it found that digitally mature brands that leverage first-party data in their advanced marketing activations were able to achieve between 1.5 and 3x higher revenue uplift than those who did not. And GA4 offers multiple activation methods for your own data to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, from some of those marketing efforts that you're leveraging. I'll go through a few of them, or I guess I'll go through a few buckets here today. But again, I think it's important to drill into to as much as possible. I'll drill into a few, but all of the links, as prior slides, will all be listed within this deck when we send it out to you all, so you can dive in a little bit further. But the first one is audience definition. So you could build granular audience segments by leveraging events, dimensions, and metrics that are collected from your site or your app. So for example, custom audiences can be configured in the audience builder using very specific conditions but you could also choose from existing templates and suggested audiences that will surface to you based on, again, what your browsing behavior looks like, as well as some of the insights that the platform will detect as audiences that might be relevant for your marketing initiatives. Second is GA4 offers a full funnel integration. So you could leverage those direct integrations in Google Marketing Platform to reach and engage with users across the entire funnel. So for example, analytics can be linked to Google Ads, where you can use those audience segments that you have from within GA4 and activate them on your ads media. So all of either those custom segments that you're building or the suggested audiences, you can immediately link through to Google Ads, and those would pull in for you to target or segment based off of. Next is the advanced analysis. So you could take your raw GA4 data for any of those teams that are a little bit more advanced in terms of their research capabilities. You can export that data into BigQuery, and you can perform advanced analytics, such as purchase probability and some other predictive use cases. So one example would be you could use GA4 data in BigQuery to develop statistical models from customer level data. So for example, lifetime value, churn, or even purchase propensity models. And you're doing all of this, again, in a privacy safe way based on the different features that GA4 has built out in tandem with the options that are provided to users when they are accessing your web or your app instances. And then lastly, cross-channel. It's a seamless integration with GMP, and it does enable strategic engagement across those channels. So again, just to kind of give you the full breadth of where you can link GA4 to, it links with Google Ads, SA360, DV360, and you can leverage all of those audience across all of these channels to basically engage with your users with one cohesive message and make sure that you're hitting the user across their entire journey. So a few of the configuration options, as we talked about when it comes to audiences. One, again, as I mentioned, you can create a new audience or you could use a template. The suggested audiences come with predictive audiences, which is a subsection of the suggested audience feature. And again, I highly recommend you check that out. It's linked here at the bottom of the slide. It allows you to unlock pretty powerful insights about your data that you could leverage. So for example, users who are most likely to churn. If you want to put out a marketing campaign to retain those customers, whether it be with a discount, whether it be with email communication that's a little bit more focused on a different value add that you might have to provide to prevent them from churning, that's where some of these predictive audiences can be leveraged and where they're most powerful. Next, you could also set audience triggers. So it lets you trigger specific events when a user matches that definition of an audience and they can become members. So for example, you could create a trigger when a user reaches a key milestone, like initiating a certain number of sessions on your properties, or reading a certain number of articles on your property, or even crossing those conversion thresholds, which we'll talk about shortly. And a few options, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have a few different options for the conditions. You could choose the scope, whether it be across all sessions, in a single session, or in a single event. You can choose sequences, so you can actually specify the order of an audience, whether they come into your, if you want to track somebody who comes to your website and watches a video, versus somebody who comes to your website, signs up for your newsletter, and then comes back and watches a video. You have the capability to customize each one of those lists in a sequenced way. Time windows, you can set customized time windows for how to track those audiences and how to build those. And then lastly, as I mentioned, I think the dynamic evaluation is probably the most important capability here, but you could build a list that's dynamic in nature. So it's not just static and a one-time build, but based on, again, the evolving landscape from a legal perspective, as well as just the changing user behavior that you're experiencing through your webs and your app instances. You have the capability to build a dynamic audience list that will continue to update for you that you could leverage across your channels. And I just want to reiterate again, audience collection is one piece of the puzzle, the collection and the segmentation. It's the integration to push these audiences into your media channels that will make this data the most powerful. So again, just I think zeroing in on the ability to build those lists, but then to push those lists in the different channels that you're buying media on, or even just running media on, is extremely important. So just to recap, for the activation side of the house, and these are just a few of the different buckets that I think are important to call out. GA4 is going to provide advanced capabilities as opposed to UA for robust audience configuration, for the insight generation, and for the activation. The ability to export data to BigQuery, again, for the advanced teams on the digital maturity scale. And I think this will be more and more important, especially as, again, our cookies are going away and that personalized, customized experience is even more important. Exporting the data BigQuery with more scalability and better efficiency is important. And then lastly, just optimizing your media activation efforts through those new features are going to allow you to bid better and target better. So I'll wrap up the conversation today just talking about how you can get started. And that countdown banner that I showed at the outset, it's super annoying. It's really annoying logging into Google Analytics and every time having to see that if you haven't migrated. But quite frankly, it is a good wake-up call. It's time to set up GA4 today, aka now, and updating your instances to make sure that you're reflecting that. And I think there's three key buckets that you want to focus on: is setting up dual tagging, creating a new set of properties, and then updating your analytics tags to collect data within this new model. And we'll talk about that in terms of what the steps or what the next steps can and should look like. And again, I'll send over some more slides that'll get into more details about how you can think about your path to digital maturity and what some of the sophisticated or direct steps look like. It was just a very long laundry list that I didn't want to scare anybody with. But essentially, why should you be doing this? Google Analytics GA4 is the future, right? Not only is it forced, but GA4 is built with some of those machine learning capabilities at its core that UA just did not have, that will uncover some of those insights from your data that you can use to improve your marketing channels. And you should be collecting that data now. And I think this is another important piece. So your organization will have historical data once you're ready to make the 100% shift over to GA4 as your source of truth. Next, new innovations. Implementing GA4 will allow you to take advantage of those new features and functionalities as they're released. You're not going to see these updates happening in UA. It's all the innovation, all the new products, all the new integrations will be happening within GA4. So one of the big ones that I liked, as I mentioned beforehand in the call, are those predictive behavioral and conversion modeling tools. I think those are super cool to play around with, especially if you're a data nerd like myself. And it's just not even close to what's available right now within the UA instance. Upgrading now is also just going to get your teams more familiar with the tool, right? And also get a head start on how your organization is going to migrate to GA4, both from a technical integration perspective, but also how to handle change management, so to speak, which is a considerable effort. And I think what you will find within the GA4 instance and with some of the AI integrations is that it's going to save your team a lot of time and a lot of headcount to do tasks and reporting that might have been a little bit more time consuming in the past. And lastly, GA4 will offer the opportunities for alpha and beta programs as opposed to UA, which, as you know, and can probably see the writing on the wall, that is going to be kind of sunsetted in terms of those new integrations. And then lastly is the cookieless insights. And especially in our ever-changing world, GA4 is going to offer those solutions to those problems that all of us have probably been facing and a lot of those questions. But with third-party cookie deprecation coming, that's not going to be available in Universal Analytics. So GA4 is definitely the way to go. And I just wanted to just wrap up here with, again, just the technical integration. I know I talked about dual tagging, and I think this is important. Dual setup, as I mentioned, is the implementation process through which a Google Analytics property is configured and deployed for the data collection on web alongside, and this is the important piece, it's not replacing Universal Analytics. It's basically happening alongside Universal Analytics so that the data streams are not crossing paths with each other, but so that it retains your historical context so that when you're ready to transfer over to GA4, it still gives you enough time to make sure that you're comfortable and ready to move over to the GA4 instance. And then basically, once you've completed the process, your measurement data is sent, as I mentioned, both to UA and to GA4. So you're basically going to be expected to use your Universal Analytics as your source of truth until all of your use cases are ready to go in GA4. So again, I just make sure that that's top of mind for your teams as you're starting to build this out. And with that being said, hopefully everybody is still awake. I wanted to hand it over to questions. So Allison, I don't know if we got questions from the group. I know I went a little bit further, but wanted to make sure we touched everything in analytics, which could be a daunting and hopefully somewhat interesting topic for a data nerd like myself, at least.
Yes. Well, for someone who is not a data nerd, I learned a lot and I thought it was very engaging. Thank you, Alex. We do have a few minutes for some questions, and we know some of you submitted questions when you registered, so we're going to start with those. And we have gotten a few in the question box, but if you do have a question you'd like to ask Alex and you haven't put it in there yet, go ahead and submit it through the question box on your screen. All right, so one of the questions we got ahead of time, Alex, was essentially, I need a better understanding of Google's thresholds, specifically on demographics and geographics and what the limits are. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the thresholding. I assume the question's probably pertaining to the dreaded. Here's a symbol that pops up Google Analytics, the dreaded orange triangle that has the exclamation point in it that talks about some of the threshold limits. And those limits are actually tied to Google Signals. I know I talked a little bit about Google Signals at the outset of the call. Again, it's all linked within the deck, but let me start with why signals are great. So signals are great because if you have Google Signals active, your GA4 property is going to collect more data and it's going to unlock certain features. And the two features that I think are most important are A, it's going to populate demographic data in GA4. And it also, we talked a lot about audiences. It's going to let you reuse those Google Analytics audiences within Google Ads, for example. However, that's where you're going to find some of those issues on the thresholding side. So if you do want to remove the thresholding warning, you actually need to turn off the Google Signals. And then also there's a section within Google Analytics called reporting identity. It's linked within the deck. And it's a little bit, not complicated, but I'm glad this question was asked. If you go into reporting identity, there's two types of reports that are visible on the page. And then if you click on see more, there's actually 3 overall. There's an option that's called device-based reporting. So essentially, if you want to remove the thresholding limits and work within your Google Analytics platform without any of those constraints, the 2 steps are turning off Google Signals and then also using the device-based reporting as opposed to the 2 other options that are listed within that section. So, I mean, great question. Again, I think all the links are in there, but if not, I can work with the Cox Media team to send over what the process will look like.
Great, thank you. Another question we had, will there be an easy way to turn on enhanced e-commerce, like with traditional universal analytics?
Yeah, so it's not going to be called enhanced e-commerce, so to speak. And I will say, I think GA4 actually provides a lot of those insights that you're getting from the enhanced e-commerce functionality from UA, just due to some of the natural reporting capabilities that are within there, especially with some of the predictive insights. I will say though that enhanced e-commerce, as much as it is in the UA side of the house, in GA4, you just want to make sure that you're setting up custom triggers that are tied to your UA codes, tied to your GA4 codes. So essentially, if there's anything in particular that might be nuanced, just make sure that you're setting up those triggers, whether it be Google Pay or some of the checkout options. If there's anything that's, what's the word? I guess out of the ordinary or potentially just not by default, make sure that you're just setting up those custom event hits, and you should be good to go from an enhanced e-commerce perspective.
Great. I think we probably have time for one more question. There's a lot we haven't gotten to yet, and I do know that Alex has agreed to answer any questions we haven't gotten to live during this call in a blog article. So if we didn't answer your question, have no fear, it will get answered and we'll post it to our blog in just a few days. So bear with us. But the last question I think we have time for is there a recommended way to set up the Explore section of GA4? It's probably a broad topic, but.
Yeah, I hate to give this answer, but I'm gonna say it really depends on what you're looking to do within GA4 and what the most important aspects are you to look to play around with. And I guess where I'm going with that is, I think this goes back to that whole AI component, right? At the end of the day, I think what you're going to find is that GA4 is going to be kind of like your best buddy or like your your accelerator, so to speak, because as you start to mess around and explore and you start to navigate to specific reports within the explore functionality, the system's pretty much going to learn what you like and what you need and basically service all of that on the homepage. So as you kind of play with the tool and play with the system a little bit, it's all custom to the user specifically, but as you play around with the tool, I think it'll basically give you the insights that you need on the homepage. And then the Explore tool itself, it's going to be custom to what you need to look at, right? Because I think various different people are, whether you're an e-com business or whether you're a B2B business, or whether you want to explore some of the loyalty kind of components that you have, the answer is that it depends. But I do think you will be very pleased with some of the AI recommendations and AI setup that it pretty much does it all for you when you log in to Google Analytics every instance.
That's exciting. That's great. Well, that is all the time we have for today. As a quick reminder, a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you later today. And we'll be back later again this summer with another guest expert and some more great content. So we hope you'll be able to join us again then. In the meantime, you can check out our website for articles, ebooks, and recordings of some of our previous Ask the Experts webinars. And of course, as I said, we'll make sure to put any questions we didn't get answered today from Alex and post those to our blog as well. Thank you again, Alex, for the great content and your time today. For any additional questions, you can always contact your Cox Media consultant, everyone. And if you're not a current customer, you can visit our website to connect with one of our media experts. So thank you all again. And again, Alex, thank you. We look forward to seeing you all again next time. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye, everyone.